the terrible, terrible blight of what these Pakistani sex rape gangs, I suppose we should call them, have been doing in a lot of northern towns like Oldham, like places like Doncaster, like Rochdale, like Rotherham. All sorts of terrible things, horrendous things going on.
Well, that's why they were so reticent, Keir was so reticent to agreeing to a national public inquiry. Now, I'm reluctant to embrace the idea of public inquiries about anything because they're usually a waste of time, very expensive, and they go on for about 40 years. But there are certain issues where you can see no other way out than a proper, full national investigation.
So the story came up again, not because of anything Keir Starmer did or of anything Labour said, but because of Elon Musk, of all people. Elon Musk picked up on some of the chatter that was going on social media, on X in particular, and he started poking the Prime Minister and started poking the government and saying, you know, you're locking people up for free speech endeavours, you're locking people up for saying things, but you're not locking up these horrible perpetrators of rape. And it suddenly started to pick up and get to a point where Keir Starmer had to make a statement about it all, and he had to say that he was going to ask Jess Phillips, the MP from I think she's a Home Office MP, isn't she? Somewhere along the line, where she's going to be able to make a statement about whether or not there's going to be a national inquiry. Because people started saying we need a national inquiry into this, we need to look at exactly why all of these Labour-run councils turned a blind eye to all of this stuff for years and years and years and years. And so many victims were coming forward, telling their stories through the Maggie Oliver Foundation, which was a fantastic operation, who's obviously been on with us many times. And Jess Phillips gets up just before Easter, just before the Easter recess, with about half an hour to go in parliamentary time, and blithely announces that there's not going to be a national inquiry into the grooming gangs because we don't need one.
Despite the industrial scale nature, the thousands of victims, the frankly conveyor belt like way that local authorities, whether it was in education, whether it was in health, whether it was in law enforcement, simply ignored it. Child abuse ignored on an hour-by-hour basis.
It was never tenable for the Prime Minister to say, no, we won't have a national inquiry. We've already had one. We hadn't already had one into the grooming gangs. And to say that just some local towns and cities would have local inquiries. Given that the cover-up of the grooming gang scandal was largely done by local Labour councils in those towns and cities, that was never, ever going to wash. And this was yet another example, not only of a U-turn by the Prime Minister, but a predicted and predictable U-turn.
Despite the victims being there, despite the witnesses being there, despite the evidence being there, this was ignored. And the chance to address this was there for Keir Starmer. Realising that there'd already been an inquiry, he said, no, we don't need another one. And then comes that U-turn, when he suddenly decides, yeah, we're actually going to have a U-turn now. And this was only really because parties like Reform UK were hot on the heels, really making, rightly so, a lot of noise about this. It's extraordinary that any MP anywhere in the Labour Party was disagreeing with this, and some really were, still to this day, were ignoring it and saying, no, we don't need another inquiry. You absolutely do. It was embarrassing. There's no house points for Keir Starmer, the fact that he changed his mind. It simply tells you that it's a government that lacks an idea of what, firstly, individuals want, secondly, what priorities should look like, and thirdly, what is right for victims.
Why wouldn't you think that it was necessary to have a proper national public inquiry into the scandal of tens of thousands of young women and girls being raped and groomed? The idea that you don't think that's something you want to investigate when you yourself were former Director of Public Prosecutions is beyond belief, I think, for most voters.
Now, could you sum up Labour's first year in office in just one word?
So they've been in office for a year. I'm trying to think of something good that's happened, and I'm struggling.
Labour's first year in power has been an exercise in abject incompetence. I have never ever known a government, and I've been around a long time and watched a lot of governments and questioned a lot of government ministers. I have never ever seen a government with so little pre-planning, so little policy making, so few ideas, so little ability to get anything done, so little thought through.
Labour's first year in office is a really toxic, scary blend of intransigence, arrogance, absolute incompetence and deceit. brazen deceit. I have never known a government with so little moral fibre, so little nous, so dangerous to the integrity, the security, the prosperity of our nation than this bunch of fools, these evil, evil idiots.
I don't think I can beat that. What she said.
It has been one of the most eventful, but not in a good way, in a miserable way. It's been miserably eventful. Almost each day when I kick the quilt off my bed in the morning, I just think, what kind of tiresome government-based nonsense is coming our way? That's how we're living our lives now.
I've always thought there was no way of getting rid of Keir Starmer before the full 5 years is up in office. Now, I don't see how he can survive even 2 years.
I'm frightened. I'm frightened about how bad they are. I'm frightened about how deceitful they are. I'm frightened about how they so easily lie. I'm frightened about their incompetence. We've got 4 more years of this. We are going to hell in a handcart under this lot. It's hard to imagine how it could get worse, but folks, I'm afraid to tell you it's going to get worse.
Useless.
Mediocre.
I think that's the most complimentary one
Right.
we've had so far.
Did Kevin just say shit?